And welcome back to another episode of TWiP Weddings. My name is Bruce Clark, and I, of course, am joined by my usual co-hosts. I've got Mr. Brian Caparici and Mr. Robert Evans here today. Good day, gentlemen.
Good
Hey.
day.
Hey. So what's the light like where you guys are today, or where your location? Is it a nice location where you're at today?
Yeah, for me, I got this beautiful giant, like 8-foot by 3-foot window here. So I've got my webcam positioned to get optimal light on my face. Although no one really watches the videos, I look as nice as possible.
You look amazing. And Robert, you're there in your secret cave.
Right. It's really just a black backdrop to hide all the crap behind me, just for, clarity's sake.
Gotcha. So that's excellent, because today we're actually going to talk about crappy locations, and we're going to share some advice on how to create amazing wedding photos, even when we're confronted with let's call it less than ideal locations. That's probably nicer than saying crappy locations, right? Less than ideal locations. But before we get into that topic, we want to remind you how you can participate in the show. We've got several ways to interact with us. First off, you can visit the website at thisweekinphoto.com/weddings. There you're going to find the show notes for each episode, and those show notes will contain links to everything we mentioned on the show. You can also leave your comments and feedback for us in the comments section. If you have a question or would like to suggest a topic you'd like us to cover, you can also click on the Contact Us button at the top of the page, choose TWiP Weddings, and that question will come into us. Or if you just want to send us an email, you can also send it to twipwed@thisweekinphoto.com. And Facebook's also where we hang out a lot, so that's probably the best place if you want to ask questions or meet other TWiP wedding listeners. Just head on over to facebook.com and search for TWiP Weddings on there and join our Facebook group. All right, let's jump into it then. So I think, as we would probably all agree, every wedding photographer would probably love it if, they could book all their weddings that only happen in, beautiful locations, right? Robert Evans, right? A lot of your destination weddings are in these beautiful locations, right? But that's probably not the reality, right? A lot of times, weddings take place in, let's call them less than ideal locations when it comes to the photography aspect. Dark churches, cluttered getting ready rooms, maybe harshly lit outdoor ceremony locations, or uninspiring, community halls. These are some of the places that we have to shoot in, but we're still expected to come away with beautiful images for our clients. So today, we're going to talk about and share some of our worst location horror stories, and provide some tips and some advice for making great photos in crappy locations, or less than ideal locations. So I want to kick it off. I want to ask both of you guys, what is the worst location or situation you've ever dealt with that you walked into it and you're like, how am I going to put lipstick on this pig and make it look good?
Oh, I have a great one.
Excellent. Let's hear it.
So again, I've said this before, but I've been shooting for 27 years. So in the beginning, of course, I did not have the most ideal, beautiful locations. And the last studio that I worked for before I started my own business, I managed the wedding department, but in 2 locations. One was in the San Fernando Valley in Sherman Oaks, in the Sherman Oaks Galleria. And the other one was in beautiful Palmdale, which is the high desert in Southern California. And when I took that job, I acquired about 7 weddings from the previous shooter, aka wedding manager. And one of them was in a town called Boron, California. And boron is where they actually mine for boron, which they use to make soap. And it is probably another hour past Edwards Air Force Base out in the middle of the desert. And I need to dig out some of these pictures and you can put them on the site for this episode. But
yeah, that would be great. Yeah, some example photos.
I've used these in a talk before and the room just dies when I show the pictures. So I show up, and it just was kind of like the Beverly Hillbillies. The bride was less than skinny, and her little brother was just kind of crazy, and the family was, but that's okay. Not everybody's, beautiful, and it was fine. And I try not to, when I have brides that might be a little, it's their wedding day. I try to find the beauty in everything, but the day just kept getting worse. And so the reception, let me just jump to that. So, well, the church outside it was white, one side of the building, and it had the giant words of the whole top to bottom of the church said church on it. And I think I was convinced, because it was near Edwards Air Force Base, that it wasn't going to get, used as a target by accident or anything. So they wanted to identify that.
They identified clearly this is church. Yeah.
So we show up, we shoot the wedding, and then we show up to the reception hall, which was the local BPOE, which, I kid you not, had overgrown weeds and tumbleweeds right outside the door. And then you walked in there and you passed the locals sitting at the bar, having their cocktails, and the inside was like picnic benches, I think green and purple and white streamers, and the buffet was Roman meal bread and lunch meat, even still in the packages, laid out, and you basically just had to make your own sandwich.
So it didn't exactly scream "style me pretty," is what you're saying.
It wasn't Pinterest worthy.
It was not Pinterest worthy. It was one of those where you see the Pinterest and then the nailed it ones, where you see something on Pinterest and then you see the ones where it's just like, no, nailed it.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And that day too, I got a speeding ticket going out there, so it wasn't really, the best day of my life.
It wasn't less than ideal location. So how did you, what the photos that you came away with that day? Were the clients happy with them? Were you happy with them? How did it turn out?
They got me to smile afterwards, let's put it that way.
Okay.
Well, and that leads me to my story. Like, what do you do? Probably on that wedding and a lot of the weddings that I ended up doing out there in the Antelope Valley, there really wasn't a whole lot of, beautiful locations. So I do think, like, going through my career, I look back on that, and that really taught me, like, how to be creative and really make something out of nothing. Because again, I'm the type of person that I can't just do the basic and walk away. And I have to do my best and somehow make it look interesting. So the one thing that I did when I worked in those Palmdale weddings a lot, because again, most of the churches and locations out there weren't very pretty, I started using the back of the church as my background. So I would open the front doors of the church, which were usually open. And then, you walk in, there's usually a lobby, and then there's the doors to the sanctuary. I would open those doors, and I would put the bride right at the opening of those doors, and I would use the back of the sanctuary as my background. So I had a little depth, and I had pews, and even if the front of the church wasn't that pretty, that would all go out of focus. And either I'd use available light coming through the front doors with her, or sometimes I lit it depending on how far in the door we were. But by doing that and doing a little bit of a shutter drag, maybe a 15th of a second with a little strobe, it would, light up the inside of the church just enough and give me some depth, but it would throw it out of focus. And it was better than just taking them and shooting them against a wood paneling wall or anything like that. And so it really worked, and for that situation, it really worked out for me.
Nice. Brian, what's your worst, less than ideal location in terms of, or most challenging that you've ever encountered in your career?
I think I can't think of one instance where, like, things weren't ideal. I think all the time I have weddings that aren't ideal in terms of location, in terms of background, in terms of whatever, because that's the joy we get to deal with as wedding photographers. Like, I go into the bride's house or the bride's parents' house or the hotel room where the groom's getting ready, and I can't say I want a north-facing window that's this big. I want sheer blinds. I want this. I want warm light in the corner. Like, sometimes I can't control what I have. And so, honestly, I would say at almost every wedding, I'm dealt with at least one circumstance where it's not ideal, whether it be the moment isn't right, or this isn't right, or timelines are wrong, or location is bad, or lighting is bad, or there's chaos, or whatever, timing is bad. I think you're always going to have that. I can think of certainly some examples where parts of it were worse, right? I mean, I remember one wedding where we went for the family photos, the wedding party photos, and the bride and groom photos. we sort of, it's this beautiful area just north of Toronto. It's called Kleinberg. And, the bride and groom wanted to go there for photos. They didn't realize that they needed to have a permit to go and walk through the park and do all that stuff. So we get there and we were confronted about it, and we couldn't go in. We couldn't do anything. So I had to do all the photos in the parking lot.
Ooh.
So I did the entire wedding party, family, and bride and groom portraits in a parking lot. And this was a busy place. So there was cars everywhere. So I had to make it work, and I made it work. In fact, I submitted that wedding to a magazine and had it featured in a magazine.
Cool.
So it's like I didn't get bad photos out of it. I just had to work my creative muscles and my vision a little bit differently than maybe I normally would. But I think it's that idea that we're never going to deal with the perfect situation that forces us to be creative and forces us to look at things differently, and really underscores the importance of being a good photographer. And I think, like, not that I want to bring this into that as a conversation, but I see so many photographers doing these beautiful style shoots, or these shoots where they have control over everything, and then they put it out there as if that's a wedding. I don't know about you guys, but I've never photographed a wedding that was organized like a style shoot, like where I had unlimited time, beautiful models. There was no stress. There was no outside influence. Like, never happens. So I think that we're breeding a new group of photographers that get used to the luxury of shooting under controlled environments, that just can't deal with the real stress of a wedding. And I think that's where experience really shines. And that's where highlighting our skills as problem solvers and as creatives and as masters of the art of photography, the craftsmanship of photography in all its intricacies of lighting and posing and positioning and composition and all of that, that's where those skills truly shine. Anyone can make a beautiful hull look good. Anyone can make beautiful light look good. Not anyone can make crappy light look good. So I think that's where the artistry and the creativity and where your skills as a craftsman in photography really starts to get highlighted.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree. That's really what separates us and what we do from somebody who just Joe Schmo with a camera.
Totally.
Right? Totally. Joe Schmo with a camera goes into that same situation in the parking lot, and their photos are going to have cars all in the background. I was just actually second shooting a wedding just actually this last weekend, and it was it was just challenging lighting situation. It was an outdoor wedding, and then they wanted to do some family photos, and it happened to be taking place in a campground. And so all around us was campers and trucks and, everything else. And so where we were doing the photos, the photographer that I was second shooting with, she's very good. She found a nice spot, but there was, trucks and campers in the background. And one of the brothers kept going, well, she's got all those trucks in the back. I said, nope, trust me. She's cropping all that out. You're not going to see any of that in the final image. And so she actually showed him something on the back of the camera, and he's like, oh. Right. Yeah. So that's when they realized, like, okay, these guys know what they're doing. Like, I'll back off now. But, that would be the same, somebody that didn't know what they were doing in that situation. Yeah. It would just be trucks and campers and whatnot in the background. Right. Yeah. So, well, those are, some good, I don't know if horror stories, but certainly, I think we all encounter those kind of challenging situations. I think my worst location, but probably most challenging, probably a couple that come to mind. There's a couple of venues in the city here that are very popular. One of them is something called the Windspear Center, and it's for the performing arts. And there has a beautiful atrium. There's a lobby in the front of it. And so a lot of clients love to book that to have their wedding ceremonies there. But the challenge with that is usually the time when they're having their ceremonies is if the sun comes out at all during where their ceremony is happening, which is usually around 1, 2 o'clock, that the room where they have it gets completely split in two. So the grooms are all under kind of the shade, and the bride and the bridal party are in full direct sunlight. Nice. And there's absolutely zero. I mean, you could set up lights, but I find during ceremonies that can be kind of distracting. So you try to minimize that if you can, but we have to sit down and talk with our brides and grooms and say, look, we know this is the place you've booked. This is the reality of the situation, and even show them some examples. Like, this is what the lighting could look like in your particular situation. So if we can, sometimes if we can have some input, maybe we'll try to switch where they stand or how they organize things, right? So that's one venue that comes to mind that's always a challenge just because of the layout of the venue, and there's nothing we can do about it. There's no blinds that can be drawn, none of that, right?
Hey, I have a thought about that, and maybe this is just like an interesting, super quick discussion that we could have. I think a lot of the times, I mean, maybe that's a dramatic example, and maybe in that case, we'd want to have influence on it being set up better. But I wonder why we as an industry seem to always want to control things, like in the sense that, like, hey, if that's what the lighting is for the ceremony, I don't want to try and make it look like it's something it wasn't. I want to like document that was the light for the ceremony. And again, like, I think there's extremes maybe in that. That's a bad example to apply this concept to. But I just wonder, it's like, if that's what it was, and if you're documenting the day, that is what it is, and you got to work with it. Obviously, you got to make the best of it. I don't know. Like, what do you guys think about that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I was going to ask both of you guys. So let's take the example. I think a better example is like getting ready in the morning, right? So sometimes we walk into these environments where it's chaos, right? There's just stuff everywhere. In the bride getting ready room, there's bras hanging off of the bed. Like, do you guys just embrace the chaos and try to hide it, or do you clean it up, or like what? How do you guys approach it?
I typically embrace it to the point where maybe when she goes to put her dress on, we'll try to find an area where I can, okay, let's kind of clean this up a little bit, get rid of some of the boxes and the luggage and the suitcases and the whatever, just so that it's a little prettier as she's, getting dressed, and the girls are, but other than that, like, the room is what it is when I walk in, and same thing, I just let it be.
Yeah. So you don't try to control it at all. You just embrace the madness and embrace the chaos.
Yeah.
Brian, do you just same thing? Do you just kind of embrace it?
I embrace it. I think that there's so much that we can do with influencing it so that things happen in the best way possible without it looking like it didn't actually happen that way. Does that make sense? And I guess like this is my perspective on it, right? Like, if you look at someone like DQ Studios, right, in the way that they do things, I don't know if you guys are familiar with them, but they'll come into like the bridal prep and they'll start placing their flashes around. Totally non-obtrusive. They really aren't obtrusive. But the imagery that they make is just like, where the heck were you for that? That's an amazing image. That like is really, really beautiful. Looks nothing like what I'm seeing here with my eyes. And that's totally cool because that works for them and their clients want that, and that's their style. They're making light, they're making images, and they're making the best of a situation, even if it ends up looking like it didn't actually look in real life. So I guess that's just where you have to think about, do you want to be a documentary photographer in the sense that you're capturing things as they happen, or do you want to be the photographer that comes in and makes it into this, not fairy tale, it doesn't have to be fairy tale like that, but do we want to make the image what we want it to be? I guess that's where the difference would come in, perhaps.
Yeah. And is that something that you get feedback from your clients, like what they like? Or obviously I think they probably will see your style, right, and probably hire you for your style, right? So somebody who's hiring Dave and Quinn, probably that's the look. Or I think of like Lanny and Erica, they do a lot of that. Two-man studios, they do a lot of that lit, particularly like getting ready and that kind of stuff. They do some really creative stuff where I've seen them put like, they're in the shower with the groom and getting like these double reflections off mirrors and like all this kinds of crazy stuff. You're going to hire somebody for that. Whereas if you show more of the real life, I guess, if you will, that's kind of what they're probably going to go for. But is that a conversation that you have with both of you guys? Do you guys?
Yeah, definitely. Like I think it's important to set the expectation, right? Because you can imagine clients don't know this stuff, right? They don't know that DQ comes in and puts these flashes out. They just know that they love the images that they see. But if the client is expecting DQ to come in and just be quiet, be a ninja on the wall, and not do anything, just document things, and then they come in and start putting flashes around and there's pops of light happening everywhere, maybe the client would be disappointed with that, perhaps, right? Or the reverse could be true. If a client is looking at my images and saying, wow, everything always looks so clean, it always looks so nice, it always looks so this, and then I walk in their place and then I make images that are not that, then the expectations will be sort of misaligned. So clients don't know the implementation of it, they just know what they see. So I think that's where the importance of you staying true to your vision as a photographer and not always going with the trend of the week type of thing. I think that's where it's important, because what your clients see is what they're going to hire you to do, and that's what you have to do. But I think it is important to have it as a conversation so that the expectations are aligned properly.
Yeah, Robert, do you chat with your clients about that? Is that something you have a conversation with them beforehand? Like if you know, let's say you're going to a particular place where maybe it's going to be a challenging lighting, or maybe it's the less than ideal, maybe doesn't match with kind of what you typically show or your style. Is that a conversation that you have with clients to kind of set those expectations?
I would say sometimes if I recognize there's going to be an issue, maybe I know I'm at a location where there's a lot of wide open space and it's beautiful, but if it's sunny out, i.e. this happens in Los Angeles a lot, you're at the beach, people are like, oh, I want my photos on the beach, but it's 85 degrees, beautiful, sunny and bright,
2 o'clock in the afternoon. Yeah.
and there's nowhere to hide. Like you have to kind of explain to them, like, if I'm in a situation like that and it's later in the day, I'll put their backs to the sun and use a little fill flash and it looks great. But in the middle of the day, 11, 12, 1, like you said, then it's like kind of challenging. Or I've had even people tell me, like, I want the ocean in the background, but if I put the ocean in the background, you have to sort of explain to them, I mean, unless I blast it with a flash and match the light to the foreground or the background, it's not going to look like what you see to your naked eye. So if I use available light and I'm just exposing for their faces, which is pretty, then the background's white and you don't see that beautiful ocean. So you have to sort of meet those expectations, or at least not, you have to let them know, here's, as a professional, this is what's it's gonna look like. So in most cases, I don't think a lot of times we talk about that, but if I recognize there's going to be a problem, or if I have a specific request like that, like, oh, I want it on the beach and I want to see the sunset. Sunset's another great example. Like in order to get a sunset, you got to typically put the bride and groom's backs to the sun. So you see, and you have to expose for the sunset, but then unless you're going to use flash and fill it a little bit, then it's not going to look exactly. I think most people don't care. But a lot of times when I see photographers shoot sunset, they use too much flash on the front side and it looks a little more plasticky. That's a whole different story.
Kind of that HDR almost type look, right?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Here, I have a question for you both. Let's flip this around.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Okay. You're at your favorite location, most beautiful place that you shoot at and you love and it's gorgeous. And you show up, or photographers think about this, but this is your 20th wedding of the season at that same place. What do you do to make it look different each time? Do you make it look different each time? Do you, like, I find that for me, in a sense, frustrating. I really enjoy working at different locations, different places, having different canvases to paint on. But I remember one summer in Los Angeles, I think I had like 7 weddings at the Beverly Hills Hotel. Now that's awesome, but there's same location, same staircase where they want everything same. So what do you guys do? Because I have the answer to mine, but what do you guys do to mix it up for yourselves?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, we have, there's definitely a few venues like that here in town. We have a hotel here called the Fairmont Hotel McDonald. And it's probably it's the prettiest hotel in Edmonton. It's an older hotel, but it's beautiful. It's a Fairmont property. So it's always, it's kind of a 5-star luxury hotel, and there's only a few of those in the city. And so it's very popular. So we probably have, 3, 4, 5 of those a year at that place. So for me, it's a big enough hotel, and I've, been there enough times that I've found, there's different areas within the hotel that'll give kind of different looks. There's a lot of areas outdoors, a lot of areas indoors. We'll go up into some of the floors and go into some of the back kind of stairwells that I know have some nice light. So I found there's enough variety in there that I could do a couple weddings back to back and shoot them in completely different spaces in the hotel. But when you get up to, the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th one, it does become more challenging. So I might try, obviously things change, like lighting, right? So lighting might not be the same during all of those, right? So it might give it a different kind of look. I'll introduce more off-camera flash maybe to kind of mix it up a little bit so that it doesn't look the same. So I could take maybe the same hallway that we shoot natural light in, and maybe we'll flip it around a little bit and shoot more with off-camera flash and darken down the background and give it a bit of a different mood or a different feel. Or even sometimes we'll go, if I've shot there a lot and I'm just not feeling inspired, there's places that are literally just nearby it that will kind of duck out to do a few, just to give it a bit of variety to kind of mix it up. So that's kind of how we'll approach it. But yeah, there's sometimes you can't avoid it if you're shooting at the same. I had one where we shot the same venue like 2 weekends in a row at the same venue, and it was sort of, we kind of, the easy thing to do was fall back in and just do the same thing we did the previous week. But we tried to mix it up a little bit just for the client, and also even for for us when we're blogging it, so that all our weddings don't all look the same. Brian, how do you handle that?
So the location might be the same, but the people are different.
Correct.
And I like to sort of look at it more that way, where it's like, yeah, sure, I may have the exact same wall with the exact same window to my left to work with, which I don't think is really ever the case, where you only have one wall and one window to work with. I think usually locations, I'm thinking of a few that we use here all the time, like, botanical gardens, right? It's huge. There's a ton of space to work with. So if I, from the parking lot, if last weekend I was here and I went left, well, this time I'm going to turn right. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to try and go somewhere different, even though I've probably been to everywhere because I've shot there for 10 years. I think still at the end of the day, the people are different. So if you use the people as the thing that injects some level of different element into the image, then that can then inspire you. If this couple is like really goofy, then encourage them into something goofy. Or if they're really romantic, then do something like that. Or if they the whole wedding party wants to do some action stuff and they want to move, or they want to walk, or they want to do that, like, use that as it. For me, and this is like even true when I was talking about the parking lot example, a location, I don't really care about location. Honestly, I know that's kind of like silly to say, but I tell couples all the time when we're planning out their timelines for a wedding, I say, honestly, like, you may want to go to this like beautiful park because it's like the park that everyone goes to for wedding photography. But I care more about convenience than I care about location, because I can make any location look good. And I think that is important because I photograph people. I don't photograph landscapes. I don't photograph the location. I'm photographing a person in a location. And so in that sense, the location is just literally a backdrop. So if I can photograph against the exact same tree with 100 couples and get a different image for every couple, because every couple is different. Right. So I think that when you start to take, I think we as photographers focus too much on that kind of stuff. It's like, oh, I was there last weekend. It's like, so I was there with a different couple. It's a totally different image. It's a totally different range of emotions. A totally different wedding party. Like,
and it's the first time for them there.
And it's the first time for them. So I think if we just go into it and say, like, yeah, I don't care. I shot against that, maple tree last weekend. I'm going to shoot against it again, but I've got this couple, and so I'm going to interact with them differently than I would the couple last weekend. So I think when we start to look at what we're actually photographing, which is people, all the other stuff kind of in a way fades into the background.
Yeah. I think what you guys said, I could duplicate all of that. And I think for me, the one thing, and I think it's always important to do this no matter what we're doing, is if you're there at the same location a lot, but make sure you take the time to shoot for yourself as well. Yes, I go to the Beverly Hills Hotel and everybody wants a picture on the beautiful staircase. And I do it because I know that's what my clients like. But then I try to find 6 other ways to do it. Put the bridal party down at the bottom in the center and shoot down, or put them up on the railings and I go down and shoot up, or, whatever it is. But, really like challenge yourself to not get stuck in the same rut and do the same things. Yes, there might be a few shots that, are the winners that everybody wants to see, but it's really about shooting for yourself and challenging yourself not to do the same thing every time.
Mm-hmm. I think the other thing too, just as like a quick side note to that, is like every time, if I go to the same park 2 weekends in a row, the chance of it being the exact same time of the day is pretty unlikely, because a couple may have the ceremony at noon versus the other may have it at 3. So the lighting has a huge impact on what the location looks like and where I might go that day for that lighting. And even if it is the exact same time of the day, maybe today is cloudy, last week was sunny. Well, my choice of location and backdrops will be different based on what the light is. So I think if we start paying attention to not only the people, but the light and where the good light is, that's different every day. So that's how you can kind of get some uniqueness built into things.
Yeah, there can be the same location might look great one day, and you go back to it the next day and it can look horrible, right? Yeah, like totally. I know this one spot that we like to go to. It's kind of this tunnel of trees, and if it's a bit of an overcast day, it can look beautiful inside there. But if it's really harsh sun, it can be really dappled light in there, and it can just look awful. So one location in one day might just be the worst location the next day, right?
Totally. So, yep, totally.
What do you guys feel about pre-scouting? I used to pre-scout a lot before weddings. I think when I was early in my career, the first couple of years, I would go and I would pre-scout a location, and I've gotten away from that now. I don't pre-scout anymore. I kind of like the challenge a little bit of having to create kind of on the day. But I find what I found with pre-scouting is it kind of boxed me into, okay, I'm going to do this here and this here and this here. And then I showed up on the wedding day and it all went for naught because the weather was, the lighting was different or whatever. But then now I felt I was more paralyzed because I had already had these preconceived ideas of what I was going to do that day. Do you guys pre-scout much anymore these days, or do you find that?
If I do it, it's 30 minutes before my start time, and I'll get and walk a property and just kind of see. And just like you said, the lighting changes, but you know what else changes when you pre-scout is you're like, oh, look at this beautiful lawn, and I'm going to shoot everything, and you show up, and that's where the reception's going to be, and there's tables, and you're like, oh, well, that kills that idea.
Yeah.
I mean, that happens a lot. So yeah, I mean, I've only done it a few times if it's super important to my client, but otherwise I do tell them, if I haven't worked there before, I'll show up, 30 minutes before, I'm coming up the room to shoot, getting ready, and I'll walk around. And even then, from getting ready to maybe the time you shoot your couple, the lights changed,
yeah,
in certain areas. Or even then you look at something like, oh, this location's great. And you get up and, oh, there's a bar there now. Or, so, I tell my couples too, I'm very upfront with that. And I think honestly, most photographers do this, but I say, yeah, I make it up as I go. Cause I do, I'm sort of inspired by the light. I'm inspired by my people and, their personalities and reactions. And, Brian mentioned that they have a goofy couple and, or what about that couple that no matter what they do, they're like totally in love and they make the puppy eyes at each other and how they touch each other. And you're like, oh my gosh, I can't go wrong. All I have to do is just point the camera at these people and not say anything to them all day. And I'm going to take amazing images. So, but that's how I treat the pre-scout.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and the other thing too, like Robert, about what you just said, what if you were to pre-scout something and I think photographers they run into this, they pre-scout something, or even if it's like right before, right, you're getting ready with the bride and then you go upstairs to look where you're going to photograph. You go up there, you define this little box, and then you're almost ignorant to anything else that's outside of that box, right? Like
right.
It's
blinders,
like yeah, like you're not going to see the beautiful light coming in this other window because you're kind of beamlined to this location that you had already pre-decided you were going to go to. So you end up not being spontaneous or being able to use your creative vision to make an image that is the best because you've predefined the box for yourself. I think like the way that I do it, there's like just two sides of it. I think we're just, again, summarizing even what you guys were saying. Number one, from the very practical side of it, the idea of location scouting puts the emphasis on the location. I don't care about the location. Like, you know what I mean? Like I'm not photographing the location by itself. So why would I want to go look at a park at a different time of the day with no people in it that I'm going to be photographing the day of the wedding? It's completely uncontextual to what I'm actually photographing. I need to see the location in the light as I'm photographing it with the people that I'm photographing in it. The location for me by itself doesn't make a difference. So for me, I don't location scout, but that's a practical reason. But the other reason is I find, and this is just then for me personally, I find I'm able to react better when I don't know what to expect. So like my creative vision is lit on fire when I have to think on my feet and have to be quick and have to react to things or have to look and analyze and be a problem solver. If I have the problem already solved and I'm just walking in saying like, I've got the answer here in my hand. Let's go and now execute on that answer. It's not inspiring for me at all. So my creativity will suffer because of that. So I shine creatively when I can problem solve in the moment and make things up as I'm going. So that's why I never do location scouting.
Right. And I think if you're somebody listening to this and that really rubbed you the wrong way, you're like, no.
Yeah,
I have to know everything. You don't have to do it Brian's way or my way or Bruce's way. Do it. Go scout and go do it, and be comfortable with it. But we're just sort of giving you some ideas
our perspective.
Of our perspectives and how we like to do it. And some people are going to resonate with that and some are not.
Yep.
I've even seen like first look, so I don't even know where I'm going to do first look half the time. And a lot of times the planners are, where are you going to do first look? Where are you going to do first look? I don't know, but I'm going to pick that location about 5 minutes before I do it. And that's just how I do it. But, you might have a different planner that like, she wants to know 6 weeks before the wedding where you're going to do it. Or, she's asking you 2 hours, while you're shooting Getty, where are you going to do it? But for me, again, I go back to where it's going to work best. We've talked about this before, but I consider location, privacy, and light. But if I have none of those, I'll pick the crappy location like Brian and just come in tight and shoot faces, because that moment's about the emotion. It's not about anything else. But if I can have all three, of course, I'll take it.
Yep. Absolutely. I want to ask one. I think we can have a separate spin-off discussion. I think this will save some of these questions that I had, because I wanted to get into some really specific examples, like dark churches, like how we handle different lighting. I think it almost comes more to lighting. So I think we can have a whole separate talk just on lighting. But I wanted to kind of close off the conversation with you guys and ask, how do you deal with requests from clients to specifically shoot in a spot that is crap? Like this, oh, I want to get the photo over here. Like, and it's usually coming from like the mom or somebody of the bride, that they want this photo in front of what they think is this pretty, like we've had this before in a hotel. They think there's something pretty in the lobby, and it's just this awful, like in terms of of lighting and everything else. How do you, when you get those requests, how do you politely steer them away from requests?
I say, would now be a good time, and I go do it.
Yeah,
because I don't think that we should be steering them. I think, and this is the thing, I think a big part of what we do, and I think a lot of photographers end up letting the creative side of what they do, like the photography side, cloud over the customer experience side. And I think we've talked about customer experience. I think the experience that we give our clients, and that extends beyond just the bride and groom, the experience, the atmosphere that we create is more important than the images that we make. In general, I think that's good, because you can be the best photographer in the world, but if you're a jerk, then you're going to fail.
Because they'll remember that over
they'll remember that, right? The thing is, photography, and I don't need to preach too much to this to photographers, but photography has a transformative effect. Just like music. When we listen to music that we used to listen to in our younger days, when that song comes up now, we're like literally transported back to that time, and we all of a sudden remember things back from that time. We feel emotions that we were feeling when that song was popular. We remember who we were with when that song was playing. Like, that's what music can do. Photography is the exact same thing. When you look at an image, if you have experience, if you have history with that image, when you look at the image, you're literally transported back to when that image was made. And that's how people have emotion invested in imagery. So if you're a jerk, if you're not being nice about things, if you're not giving a great customer experience, no matter how great your photography is, people are going to hate their photos because they're going to remember the experience. So I think it's important for us to give a great experience. So, and I have it all the time. If a mom is like, oh, we should do a picture by these stairs, we had our wedding pictures taken there, and I look at it and it's full sun, looks like complete crap, I say, Mom, let's go do it. This is important to you. Let's go make a quick image. I say, this isn't where I would go, and let me tell you why, because of the sun, because of this. But you know what? It's important to you. I'm going to go make an image for you because that's important.
Okay.
And then after I've done that, after I'm done that,
Right.
then I want to go back over here and take an image over here because we got some better light.
Cool.
Right.
Yeah.
It's all about
I do it.
compromise.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I think I can give you an exact scenario. As soon as you asked the question that popped up, I was doing a wedding, on the boardwalk in Santa Monica between two hotels, where the one wedding was at. And there's only it's a beach situation. There's like a tiny little foliage alongside of this one hotel to do family groups. And I'm like doing them in there. Well, the bride's sister's husband came up to me, and he's some famous, which I didn't even know at the time, or somebody told me about it. His name's Casey Neistat or something. And he has like millions of followers on YouTube. And he's like, why aren't we doing the pictures on the beach? And I knew somebody had told me he was some famous YouTuber, and I was like, well, because the lighting's not that great. I said, but let's finish these pictures here. I'll take you guys all down on the beach, bridal party, and we'll go do a shot, And so it wasn't the most, the best light, but I didn't tell him no. I stuck to my guns and did it where finished my, smaller groups, the immediate family, the bridesmaids, the groomsmen. And then I took the whole bridal party down to the beach, and we did, a beach photo with the, 12 o'clock sun and the 6,000 people on the beach in California. But I did it, so, you just have to kind of deal with it. And like Brian said, meet expectations, kind of compromise to make people happy.
I think too, if I can just add one final thought to that, I think sometimes, I always have one final thought. I think sometimes
You're like Steve Jobs. There's one more.
I think sometimes we only get that kind of stuff happening unless there is a sentimental or a nostalgic reason for something. I think sometimes we only get that because the client or whoever is surrounding the client, the wedding party, the mom, whatever, they're just trying to be helpful. They're just trying to because they think like, oh, wouldn't that be cool, or wouldn't that be here, or we went here when it was like winter, completely different light and completely different something. I think our photos turned out, so of course these photos should turn out there, right? Like they're not doing it with an ill intent.
Yeah.
And I think that if we can show that we take control of things, that we know what we're doing, if we're showing a few images in the back of the camera here and there, if the clients know the kind of work that we provide and produce, I think most of the time, if we're setting expectations properly, everyone around will just be like, this guy knows what he's doing. Don't worry about it. Like, and that's a big reason why I send out emails to the wedding party the week before their wedding. And I say, hey, I wanted to reach out, introduce myself. Here's some of my work. We're going to be hanging out together all day on Saturday for so-and-so's wedding. Just wanted to introduce myself, say hello, and give you an opportunity to check out any of my work so you kind of understand what I'm doing. So if I ask you to do a headstand, you don't think I'm going crazy because I make decent imagery. Okay. So when I do that, then all of a sudden now the wedding party is aware of the work I create, and they're not going to be like, what is this guy doing? Is he crazy? Like they know, they're like, oh my gosh, this guy's good. And I've had that many times where it's like someone will say something and the bride will be like, hey, like, Jeremy, shut up. This guy, like, Brian knows what he's doing. You might think this looks silly or crazy or this is a bad location, but he knows what he's doing. Just let him do his thing. So I think when you have that confidence going into it and you're taking control of things and you are being the guide for your clients, I think you're going to run into that much less often.
Yeah. Excellent. Excellent. Good advice. Any final thoughts, Robert? Can we move on?
No, we're good. Move it on.
Excellent. All right. Well, let's move on. We are going to we're going to answer a listener question after we want to thank our next sponsor. We've got FreshBooks as a sponsor of TWiP Weddings, and so for those maybe who aren't familiar with FreshBooks, FreshBooks is an online cloud accounting solution, and they've just launched an all-new version. It's been redesigned from the ground up. It's been custom built to transform how freelancers and small business owners can deal kind of with their day-to-day paperwork. I think we can all agree probably accounting maybe is one of our least favorite aspects of the job of running a small business.
I think it's my least favorite.
Yep, it's up there for a lot of people. So FreshBooks is a great solution. Getting started on it is really simple. Even if you're not a numbers person, if you don't understand, profit and loss and all those things that go into accounting, FreshBooks is really easy, especially if you're not a numbers person. And the new version that they've redesigned is really built around that. It's designed to be very intuitive, very user-friendly. It's very easy to create and send things like professional-looking invoices, in less than 30 seconds. It's just like if you've worked in Word, it's almost like working in Word. They've taken that approach because that's how a lot of freelancers send out their invoices, right? Is they do it up in Word and they send it out. Well, this is very much like that. You'll get a nice preview of what the invoice is going to look like. You don't have to deal with formulas and formatting. It's just really simple. You just put in what your services are, the amount, and away you go. You can add your own logo. You can customize it with your own color scheme so that the invoice reflects your brand. And then when you send it out, FreshBooks can actually tell you that your client has seen it. So if you call them up to say, hey, where's my money? They can't say, oh, I didn't get that invoice. You can actually find out, actually you did, and this is when you opened it. You can, accept things like online payments with just a couple of clicks. So again, you can get paid faster, which I think is very important for all of us running a small business. Usually cash flow is always an important concern. So they've also got the ability now to do deposits. So you can invoice, up front when you're kicking off a project or a wedding and you want to take a deposit, you can do that. And then they can pay, clients can pay with credit card right through the invoice. And then they've also introduced a bunch of other new features to kind of help you stay organized. Their new dashboard is really great. We had a chance to look at the product a little while ago, and it's awesome. So when you log in, you can really get a sense, a pulse of where your business is at. So you can sort of say, like, how is my business doing? You can know at a glance, like, what's owed, what's overdue. Are you in the red? Are you in the black? You've got a great notification center that sort of tells you kind of what's going on in your business. Think of it like your personal assistant. You can also, do things like take pictures of your receipts. And so you keep track of, all your expenses and things like that. And then you can also do time tracking. So if you're doing anything like designers, that kind of stuff where you're accounting for your time, or maybe you charge for your album design time, for example, it now has time tracking. So you can go in and track that time. So, just, get ready. It's the simplest way to be more productive and be more organized, and probably most importantly, get paid quickly. So FreshBooks is offering a 30-day unrestricted free trial to our audience. To claim it, you just have to go to freshbooks.com/weddings and enter weddings in the How Did You Hear About Us section. And then you can start your 30-day free trial today. And we want to thank FreshBooks for their support of TWiP Weddings. All right, let's move on. We've got a listener question, and each week we'll choose a listener question to answer on the show. This week, we had a question come in from Akbar Saeed on our Facebook group, actually. And Akbar is curious to know if we have any recommendations for places to sell used gear. He says he has a rack load of Pocket Wizard +3s he has to sell. I don't know what he means by a rack load, if that's like 2 or if it's like 100. I'm not sure, but what would you guys advise, Akbar, in terms of where to go to sell used gear?
Well, if any of our listeners, if any of our listeners are looking for some Pocket Wizard +3s,
yeah,
perhaps go over to the Facebook page and
get in touch with
Akbar.
There. I actually think it's funny because I'm just doing a bit of like a sort of fall cleanup of some of my gear. I've got a whole bunch of Fuji bodies that I'm getting rid of because I just got the new XT2, which, surprise, that's my pick of the week. And there's so I'm going through this right now. There's a ton of Facebook pages and groups that are for this. And I actually think, like, once upon a time, 5 years ago, if you were asking me this question, I'd say go to Kijiji, go to eBay, go to Amazon, do those kinds of things, because you can sell used gear on there. Like, you can say, hey, this is the, Canon 5D Mark III on Amazon. I want to sell a used version of this. And anyone looking for the Canon 5D Mark III could see, oh, hey, Brian has a used one. I'll buy it from him. So you can still do that if you want. But there's so many communities of photographers out there that are actually just made for selling and buying gear that I've had a great experience getting rid of stuff and buying stuff from there because it's targeted just for that. So I would just literally search photographer buy/sell, go join a bunch of groups and post them up in there because that's what they're there for.
Yep. Yeah, that's been my experience. Robert, how about you? Any others?
Well, I mean, again, there's the Craigslist, which is the easy. If you have Craigslist in your area, I mean, the thing about Craigslist is you just have to deal with flaky people and, driving to meet people and all those things. But I've had pretty good success with it. Met some really nice people. And, you get your cash when you want it. And so, I mean, there is that. You could always try Craigslist. But I've also sold a few things in groups like that that's worked pretty well for me as well.
Yeah. Do you think, have you guys ever tried approaching photography schools or institutions to see if they ever need?
That's a good idea. I've never thought about that. No.
Yeah, I thought about that. Maybe that if it was still current and good, maybe some schools.
Probably a lot more red tape to cross when you go through things like that, because then they got to get approvals for financing and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Or you could donate it. You could donate it to schools, and maybe that old body's only worth $500 cash, but you could get a $750 receipt for the donation.
Mm-hmm.
It just depends on what you need. If you want the write-off or you need the cash quickly to upgrade to something different.
Yep.
A
couple of the people
in the fire starter. You can.
Yeah. A couple other people in the Facebook group suggested B&H. I guess if you're in that area, I guess they buy and sell used gear.
You could trade it in, Like a lot of camera shops will do that, where they'll take it. I mean, here's the thing though: when they take it, they'll take it for a much lower value than what you could sell it for privately.
It's like trading in a car.
Yeah, because they're going to turn it around and then sell it as a used piece of equipment, and they're going to make profit on that.
Yeah.
So that's always an option too. You could do a trade-up program.
Yeah, there's somebody else posted something called KEH.com. K.com. It's a used camera place. I haven't heard of that one before. And there was another service, I don't know if it's still around. It was called Gazelle, but it was more for trading in electronic, phones and iPads and all that kind of stuff.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if that still is around, but that was an option. But yeah, I agree kind of with Brian. I think the Facebook groups, that's where I've had most of my success, is the buy and sell groups. And I know in town here, there's a place that's they rent photography, like a studio space for photographers, and once or twice a year they have a swap meet. And you just show up there and people bring all their stuff and you can have kind of a buy and sell swap meet. So yeah, I'd say Facebook and just sort of connecting with your local photography community is probably your best bet for selling used. gear.
Sweet.
Excellent. Well, hopefully that gives Akbar some places to try. And if you need some Pocket Wizard Plus 3s, Akbar has some to sell. I'm selling a 5D Mark II with a battery grip, so if anybody needs that, if it's still available by the time you hear this episode, hit me up.
And of course, think as a disclaimer, this is the last time that we're going to be talking about things. We don't want everyone emailing us saying, "Hey, can you guys mention?"
Yeah, a trade, turn it into the TWiP Weddings buy and sell show.
Yeah, we have a little buy and sell section. It's a new featured segment on the TWiP
shopping
Wedding
show.
TWiP auctions.
TWiP auctions. Yeah, exactly. Hey, talk to Frederick. Maybe he'll set it up. Perfect. Of course, if you have a question, we want to hear from you and answer your questions. So just head on over to thisweekinphoto.com and submit your question. Just click on the little link that says contact us and choose weddings, and we will get that message. Okay, let's move on then to our picks of the week. Each episode, we are going to share a photography-related item that we think would benefit wedding photographers, and our picks can be anything as long as they're somehow related to photography or the business thereof. So, Brian, we kind of already know yours, but let's give us a little more details on it.
The beautiful Fujifilm X-T2 camera that I finally have my hands on, which I'm so excited. And I guess by the time this comes out, listeners are probably like, this thing's been out for a month. What are you talking about?
It's been replaced by the XT3.
Yeah, exactly. Seriously, right?
Seems
like the iPhone 7, all of a sudden the iPhone 10 is out. I don't understand what's going on.
What's going on?
Yeah. So no, the Fuji X-T2, it has blown away my expectations of the Fuji X-T line of cameras. I shot with the X-T1 for about a year and a half. I've been shooting with the X Pro 2 for about 6 months now. I was actually the first photographer in North America to shoot a wedding on the X Pro 2, which is kind of fun. Cool. I got it like 6 months before they released it, so I kind of put it through the paces.
Very cool. What are some of the highlights of this?
Yeah, it's now gotten to a point where I can comfortably say things like autofocus speed, things like moving things around, like being able to react to things. I can now react to things with my X-T2 as quick as I was able to with my D4S. So moving focus points around, focusing, startup time, like all things like that. It feels like a more responsive camera. So I love it. The quality on it is amazing. It's the same sensor as was on the X Pro 2, so there's no surprises there. Fuji makes amazing sensors, and they make amazing JPEG processing. So there's nothing new there, but it's the body I've been waiting for. It's got 2 card slots, so I love that for overflow for shooting weddings. The autofocus on it is stellar. The handling on it is stellar. It's got a great feel. I prefer it to the rangefinder style body that the X Pro 2 has. So yeah, all around great camera. I love it. I'm nuking all my other Fuji stuff, my older bodies. That's why I said I'm selling a few things, and I'm just picking up or have picked up 2 X-T2 bodies, and those are my main bodies now to shoot with. I'm not going to go back and kind of use versions of everything. I'm just going to stick with those because I feel like they've finally gotten it.
Yeah. And now they have a medium format camera coming out, I see, as well, too.
Damn, I should have had that as my pick. Well, I haven't tried it yet, so I can't really say it. But
next time,
oh my gosh, can we just quickly, like, for a second, say, like, if you haven't read about it yet, which hopefully at this point, because it had been a month ago that you're listening at this, like, go read about it. It just sounds phenomenal. For a wedding photographer, is it relevant? I don't really think so, and I can't really say for sure until I've tried it. But I'm pretty excited by what they're doing and how they're pushing the industry. So I'm less saying like, look at Fujifilm doing this thing, and more so like, I think this is going to introduce a whole new breed of camera, and this is going to open up the competition. And it's basically going to force the competition, which has been stagnant for a while in that space, to say, hey, we better get our shit together. So I'm excited for what that's going to do in that space.
Nice. Excellent. Yep. Mr. Evans, what is your pick of the week this week?
So I'm going with something that I've had for quite a long time, and this might even be a pick that I've done before, but I was using it again this last weekend, the Lowell GL1 Power LED light. And it's just it's basically a gun light, and using it to light detail. I use it to light detail at weddings. I did a styled shoot this last week, and I use it to light some of the elements of that. And it's just such a handy little, you don't have to drag around strobes and flashes, because a lot of times I can use this in replacement of it. I mean, it depends on what you do, but it's a great little product. Little expensive, but It's really worth it. It's about $700, but it's a really great light. It has a rheostat on it. You can raise it up and down. You can focus the light. You can throw a big beam, a wide beam, excuse me, or shoot a tight beam. It's just a really versatile light. So yeah, just Google it. We'll put it in the show notes, but it's the Lowell GL1 Power LED.
Yeah, that's great to have something like that, like sort of a constant dimmable, adjustable light source with you. Because, again, if you're in a situation where maybe the light is not ideal, or you're in a kind of crappy location and you need to augment the light that's there, that's a great thing to just sort of have in your kit. Light, it's portable. Like I say, it's not a lot of setup. It's just boom, you can turn it on. And
I've used it at weddings to backlight my couple on the dance floor, or to spotlight them on the dance floor if the lighting's really bad in the reception. If you find yourself shooting at night, which we do a lot of times in a hotel, and you just have ambient light, well, now you can match that light and shoot them right in the hotel and spotlight them. It looks great. It has threads on the front of it, so you can put a daylight filter on it as well, and use it outside if you want to use a little for light. I mean, it's just a great little product.
Yeah, they're cool. I saw them had a chance to look at them at the WPPI in the trade show there. They looked pretty cool. I have the ice light, so it's similar kind of constant light source. So yeah, definitely good to have. Well, my pick this week is actually another podcast. So again, if you're listening to this, obviously you like podcasts, and the folks over at Buffer, that's an app for doing like your social media scheduling posts. They've started a new podcast, and it's called the Science of Social Media Podcast. So if you're interested in learning more about social media, we've talked about it a little bit on the show, but they really kind of dig into it. So I've listened to a couple episodes so far, and it's really, really good. So if you're interested in learning more about social media and doing kind of a deeper dive into that, the folks over at Buffer have that podcast. So the Science of Social Media. All right, well, that brings us to the end of another episode of TWiP Weddings. We want to thank Fresh Books for their support of TWiP Weddings. Brian had to duck out, but we'll put links to all of his profiles and whatnot in the show notes if you're looking for Brian. Of course, you can find him. He's always usually hanging out over at Sprouting Photographer, or check out his product Sprout Studio. Of course, we want to remind you, send in your questions for the show, and leave your thoughts by commenting on the blog post for this episode. So, Mr. Evans, where can people find you if they want to? What have you got going on, projects and things coming up in the next little while?
Still busy through the fall. Couple, 3-4 more weddings through November till the end of November, and some portraits, and still a little bit of travel. Going to Chicago to speak on a panel at a PDN thing at I think it's Columbia College in college.
Okay.
But by the time you hear this, I will have done it. But so yeah, but if you're looking for me, you want to find out more, look at my work, stalk me online. My website is robertevans.com. Instagram is @robertevans.com. Of course, I will interact with you on our Facebook page. And then my company Facebook page is Robert Evans Studios. And you guys, be sure to, if you love our podcast, tell your photographer friends, spread the word, get them to join our Facebook group. People are joining by the day now, so every day I'm approving somebody, so get in there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think we're starting to build a great little community there, and I see lots more kind of discussion happening and questions, so that's a great place for sure. So excellent. Well, if you are looking for me in terms of what I've got going on, I'm actually going to be leading a workshop next April. So my friend Darlene Hildebrandt, who's from digitalphotomentor.com, and if you listen to TWiP at all, you've probably heard Darlene on there. She's also the editor-in-chief for DPS. She leads these workshops. She does a lot of travel workshops, and she does one in Drumheller, Alberta, which is kind of the Badlands of Alberta. It's where they found a lot of the dinosaurs. It's a really cool area. It's very cool to go from kind of prairie flatland, and then all of a sudden you're in these like beautiful kind of valleys, and there's hoodoos and all this kind of stuff. So last year I accompanied her and helped her with her weekend photography workshop. And this year she's going to be in Morocco at the same time. So I'm going to actually be leading that workshop in Drumheller. So it's April 21st to the 23rd.
Nice.
And we're going to go out. It'll be pretty cool. We're going to do some night photography. We're going to do some sunrise stuff. I'll probably bring some off-camera flash. We go to a ghost town We photograph some hoodoos. We go to a coal mine, and there's a real live coal miner that we use to do some portrait work. So it's pretty cool. So it's a fun weekend. It's a busy weekend, but so if you're interested in checking that out, I'll put a link to that workshop, but you can head on over to digitalphotomentor.com/workshops, and it's the Drumheller workshop. So if you're interested in joining me, I'll be there. But if you want to find me online, you can visit my website at momentsindigital.com, or I'm at Bruce Clark with an E at the end of Clark on most of the usual social networks. And that brings us to the end of another episode. Be sure to visit our website at thisweekinphoto.com for this show and all the other great shows on the TWiP network. And thanks again for listening to TWiP Weddings, raising the bar one wedding at a time.